Let's go back and talk more on President Muhammadu Buhari's visit to Washington, D.C., where he'll be talking soon with President Donald Trump. We have now the editor, Pan-African Newswire, Abayomi Azikwe, to talk about this. Abayomi, good to have you on the program at this time. Tell us your expectations from this landmark event.
I think that the president and his counterpart in the United States are going to be discussing military cooperation between the two countries, as well as possible renewed economic cooperation as well. There's been the transfer of at least 12 U.S. warplanes to Nigeria, and which has caused a lot of controversy within the Nigerian parliament. There's also efforts to bring about more economic cooperation with the collapse some 3 years ago of oil trade between the two nations, and possibly an effort to recover funds that have been taken illegally out of Nigeria and invested inside the United States as well.
Abayomi, when you talk about security challenges in Nigeria now, two major issues come to mind. First, the Boko Haram insurgency, and of course the farmers herders clashes. How would you expect the President Buhari to relate these issues? What sort of assistance, if any, do you expect him to request from the U.S. as to these security issues?
It's very difficult to say, particularly in regard to the problems associated with the Fulani herdsmen. It appears that these difficulties relate more to domestic politics inside of Nigeria. In regard to the situation in the Northeast with Boko Haram, it has been internationalized from the standpoint that there is a regional military alliance between Niger, Chad, and Cameroon to try to fight Boko Haram. Now, under the previous government of President Barack Obama, there was the failure to transfer military equipment in any significant level due to purported human rights violations. Well, we see the United States is definitely involved in transferring much larger amounts of military equipment to other countries which have even worse human rights violations than the Federal Republic of Nigeria. So I don't know exactly how President Trump and his administration can assist in this regard. I think the Nigerian military and the security forces have to be much better organized and much firmer command structure within the Northeast in order to effectively stamp out Boko Haram. However, the President, Muhammadu Buhari, said when he came in 3 years ago that he was going to defeat Boko Haram within 6 months. That has not happened. The attacks are still going on. So this is a major problem for the president, considering that he has to stand for elections again next year.
And then let's delve into money matters for a bit now. What sort of economic agreements, deals, or offers are you expecting from this bilateral meeting?
That's another difficult question because oil prices are still depressed. Natural gas prices are still down. The United States, under the Obama administration, shifted its energy policy to rely more on domestic production through hydraulic fracking, through offshore drilling, through shale oil production. And this has had a devastating impact on the international oil markets. Most of the emerging economies, whether it's Russia, Venezuela, Angola, have suffered tremendously over the last 3 years. Some have fallen into recession. They're attempting to come out of recession, but growth rates remain relatively minuscule. So I don't think the United States has a lot to offer in this regard, particularly considering the fact that U.S. growth rates are very low as well. And Trump has been attempting to start a trade war with certain select states, China, for example, Russia. Relations are worse than they've ever been since the conclusion of the Cold War. I don't think the president of Nigeria can expect too much in regard to economic cooperation and investment from the United States.
All right, we'll see how that plays out. But then Nigeria's 2019 general election, a very crucial one, is just around the corner. Do you expect any highlights at all from this meeting to focus on the election or to be about the election?
Well, President Buhari, of course, is attempting to exert himself diplomatically. This could play well back home in regard to him meeting with the president, having a face-to-face meeting in the White House with President Trump. But I'm certain in the back of everyone's mind, and maybe in the front of people's minds, are the derogatory statements that Trump made about Africa in general just several months ago, referring to African countries in a very, very disparaging manner. And this had a tremendous negative impact on how people view the Trump administration. So here we have a situation where the president of the United States obviously does not respect Africa, does not respect Haiti or El Salvador. And at the same time, the president of the most populous state in Africa, one of the leading economies on the continent, is sitting down with this president in the aftermath of such racist, derogatory statements that were made by the United States.
Abayomi, just recently, President Buhari was criticized very strongly across the country for some remarks he made about the Nigerian youth. Are you expecting any drama sort of from this meeting with President Trump, or do you expect him to be more diplomatic now when he talks about both the youths, Nigerians in general? Do you expect him to be more diplomatic about his remarks this time?
Hopefully he will. The youth of Nigeria need economic opportunities. They need jobs. They need business opportunities. There's an epidemic right now of codeine usage that's spreading even in the north. And this has to be addressed. These are problems that stem directly from socioeconomic disadvantages. We've seen the same thing in the United States. So these problems have to be attacked. Not by trying to put down young people in Nigeria, but to lift them up through opportunities and through education.
Abayomi, definitely, and this is even as the SDP has warned or advised, rather, the president to watch what he says this time around. Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us here on The World Now.